Hey everybody, what's going on? This is your boy Jarrell Mason, better known as Jay Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers while they're here to be celebrated. With me right now, I have a fellow music lover based out of the Big Apple, New York, who has been in many Broadway productions, produced music for other people's, a very around good person and music connoisseur. Let's give a big thank you and round of applause for coming on to the podcast. Mr. Christian Jones. Christian, thank you for coming on to Beyond the Album Cover, sir.
Thanks for having me, Drew. I appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate the invite and coming out. Let's just jump right into it. Were
Sure.
you born in New York or did you relocate from elsewhere and then made your way to the Big Apple?
Well, it's weird. I was born in New York City. I was born in Harlem. When my parents divorced, I moved to Detroit. So I would go to school I would go to school in New York City, and I would spend my summers in Detroit. And then I ultimately just settled here and just stayed here full time and went to college here. I went to NYU. I majored in musical theater and a specialization in vocal. I graduated from there in '97. Then I did a little road shows. The first show I did was hair. I did that for an entire year. And then I was on and off doing different shows, and I actually did a couple of independent films as well.
Okay, now you mentioned spending your summers out in the Big D in Detroit. What up, though? I'm sure you're very familiar with WJLB and the legendary station and personalities that came out of there.
I sure am. I knew Coco when it was Coco and Foolish in the morning. They used to do a morning show on 98, and I knew Coco really well. And there was another radio station that I knew, 92.3. I knew a couple of people there too. But it was really interesting. Detroit has its own music thing going, and it has a really strong dance music scene going. And a lot of people aren't really familiar with that, but they have a big house music and a big R&B following down there.
Yeah, and I definitely know Ghetto Tech is definitely huge out in Detroit. And I don't know if you've seen the documentary God Give Them Drum Machines about all of those producers that came out of Detroit and really, alongside rest in peace Jay Dilla, pretty much
Yep.
put Detroit hip hop on the map. And of course, Eminem, Royce the 5'9", everybody that come out of the Detroit rap scene after that.
Yeah, Detroit has really strong music history that goes through a lot of different genres. I mean, of course, Motown, and then they had a lot to do with the disco era. And then when the whole underground dance music scene started going with Mike Clark and a lot of different dance producers and whatnot going on down there. And then of course you got rap with, like you said, Jay Dilla and Eminem and the whole scene from there. The hip hop shop over on 7 Mile and between 8 Mile and Woodward. So like they have their whole scene going on and a lot of music history there. Detroit really should get more recognition for a lot of the contributions it's made musically.
Yeah, definitely more than just Motown if you really know your music history. But if it wasn't for Motown, the world wouldn't know R&B music because it was pretty much was R&B music that was crossover, acceptable to the pop audience. While when you went down to Stax in Memphis, it was pure, raw, unadulterated R&B.
Yeah, true that. And then a lot of different producers came out of the Motown era, like Norman Whitfield and a lot of other guys branched off and started doing their own thing. I mean, like a lot of people remember Rolls Royce and Car Wash, but we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for Norman Whitfield. He did a lot of the Temptation stuff, and a lot of them, like I said, they branched off and became even more famous in England, in Europe, and whatnot. I mean, whenever I've gone over there to the UK, I've been surprised at how many different acts that really can't get arrested here anymore, but over there they're like idolized, and rightfully so, because of the music scene wouldn't be what it was if it wasn't for those people who contributed what they did.
Right. And if you look at the Northern Soul sound over in England, it was pretty much their love letter to Motown.
Yep. Yeah, it's really weird because the Northern Soul, that scene kind of kicked off right around the same time as disco. But the weird part is that it was a lot of it were songs from Detroit, a lot of R&B songs that really didn't catch on here, but they took on a life of their own over there. I mean, there was one song that I can't remember who it was by, but it was Do I Love You Like I Do or something like that. And whenever that song would come on, they would just go crazy. And it was I don't know how it caught on. I think it was organic. I mean, I'm not really sure about how the Northern Soul scene hit, but whenever I've looked at the Northern Soul compilations, it's been tons of songs that like the Motown group that really didn't kick off here, but they're big on the Northern Soul scene. So I thought it was really interesting that it was right about the same time disco kicked off here. So I guess they had theirs and we had ours.
Right, definitely that. And being in New York, New York, epicenter of this little thing that just celebrated 50 years last year, hip hop, and it later branched off to all of the different regions of the US and all over the world. And if it wasn't for that, hip hop wouldn't have spawned the growth. And then also, too, New York is responsible for really the first youth movement in R&B that I like to call the New Jack Swing sound, with everything that was pumping with Teddy, and prior to that, Full Force, who I felt was the template for what was to come with what Teddy was doing with New Jack Swing. So what was that first reaction for you when you first heard a lot of those classic songs from Keith Sweat, Guy, I'll Be Sure, and how R&B really had some attitude?
Well, the first New Jack Swing song that I remember that really knocked me over was "God Groove Me." When I first heard that, that was my joint. So there was that, and then of course he got into when they even did a song for Boy George at one moment. "Don't Take My Mind on the Trip" that Teddy Riley done, and a lot of people were like, "What?" But it just shows that the when something organic can permeate and bubble underground and then just reach people right in their soul, that's the epitome of what R&B is. And that's something that withstands genre. It doesn't care about class or background or whatnot. When you feel it, you feel it. And I think that was why New Jack Swing was so popular, is because underneath the groove, there's always, for most of them, there was this real underlying element of love. Like a lot of New Jack Swing songs, a lot of people didn't realize that love was the permeating topic in most of them. And just about every Bobby Brown song, it was about love. It's my prerogative, love of myself. But all the other ones, that was like an ongoing thread through it. The Today, that Him or Me song was all about love. Or I mean, there was just so many, and I think that was one of the things that made it so popular, is it reflected the urban landscape. You had this really gritty, aggressive beat with underlying message underneath, and these smooth vocals on top of it. That is the epitome of urban life. So I thought that was one of the reasons why it resonated so strongly at that period.
Right. And the crazy thing when you listen to Make It Last Forever when it came out in 87, how any album prior to that, it was very lush, very smooth, adult oriented, because there was right a time when you had Luther, Freddie, Anita, Lilo Thomas, everything that was coming out of Hush Productions, Melba Moore, Kashif, Melissa Morgan. And then when you pop in Make It Last Forever, the sonic sound changed because Teddy Riley was able to merge the street and the sweetness of 70s R&B vocals, melodies, with the aggressiveness and the hard-hitted edge of hip hop with the beats. And I also think too that although not considered a New Jack Swing album, I kind of think Jam and Lewis was going in that direction with Janet and Control.
I wholeheartedly agree. Because when you listen to "What Have You Done For Me Lately," that's a New Jack Swing song all day. And one thing that my dad had said, that I really, it's really stuck on me, and he said when disco first came out, it was a lot like New Jack Swing, where you had like the urban beat underneath, and then they had the strings over it to epitomize the smooth sophistication on top of it. And that was what disco essentially was. It was like this gritty R&B music, dance music, but it had strings on it, which was like the nod to the sophistication. And then everybody would dress up when they would go out, so that kind of just created this whole street but sweet thing. And you had Barry White with his first couple of songs, and that it pretty much epitomized that whole sound. And when you sit and listen to it, it kind of gives you that feeling where you feel like you feel strong and you feel smooth at the same time. So I think they really hit the mark when they went with what they went for.
Right. And listening to the Control album, you can hear the identity that they gave Janet that I felt was lacking on the first two albums, the debut and the Dream Street album. How those were good records that were done by Leon Silvers, Renee and Angela on those first two records, but it really didn't have that stamp. And I think when she got with Jam and Lewis, they were able to give her that stamp, that sound, and then the look started to come together. And then, of course, it really all came to massive pop appeal when Rhythm Nation dropped to 89.
Yeah, what's funny is I went into the YouTube rabbit hole a little while ago, and I just stumbled on some old Janet Jackson clips, and some of them, a lot of the early live clips that she would do were very much like the time. I mean, she had Jimmy and Terry were on the stage with her, and then she had Jerome with the mirror, and a lot of it, particularly when she performed at the Grammys that year, she's like, "What have you done for me lately?" and "Nasty," and I looked at it, I was like, "Wow, that's very the time-esque." And then she slowly but surely she morphed her style a little bit and became if essentially the blueprint, like a lot of people refer to her as the one who started. You could pretty much when somebody makes a defining mark in music, you can always tell who comes after them. And Janet is one of those people. Like there wouldn't have been a Ciara or an Aaliyah or a lot of those people, those singing, dancing, really visual entertainment female artists that came after Janet. Like she really, even when you think about it, like she was having the whole dancers and the whole cinematic elements to her videos before Madonna was. And so like I remember Madonna didn't start doing that until like 80s, 88, around like a prayer or whatnot. I mean, like, probably maybe Papa Don't Preach even, but Janet, what have you done for me lately was before that. I mean, so it was like that whole scene and bringing something different to what people of color, women of color, and artists in R&B were doing. She was doing something completely different. And the reason why I think the trends followed her is because it's something that stuck. It was something that was visually appealing. The songs were catchy. They were really well written. Janet has probably the best background vocals in the game. I mean, like when I sit and listen to like Come Back to Me and Let's Wait a While, like the woman can really sing. So I think she's another one that doesn't really get the credit that she deserves. I mean, she's getting it now, but I think she's even due more.
Now, on the subject of the Jacksons, what's your thoughts on the Michael Jackson biopic that's going to drop next year with Antoine Fuqua directing, and we have Jafar Jackson, son of Jermaine, and playing his uncle? And how do you think that's going to be received, especially knowing that a Jackson is going to be playing the King of Pop?
Curious. I'm really curious about it because I'm wondering how is he gonna play the darker Michael? I mean, like that was the first thing I thought because I was looking at it. The snapshots that I've seen were later. Like it was like there were a couple of shots of him and Nia Long. I think she played his mother.
I'm playing Kate, playing the
Yeah,
grandma. Yeah.
so I thought you're right. So I was looking at a lot of the different skill shots and everything. I'm intrigued because I love a biopic, but I'm wondering how intellectually honest it's going to be, being that he has to pay some respect to his family without betraying the legacy of his family. So I'm really curious about how that's going to play out because a lot of times when I've noticed when the family is involved in the producing of a film, it kind of leans one way. So it's probably going to be even more of an event with him starring in it. I'm intrigued. I'm curious to see how it's going to go. It's supposed to be a really big budget film, and Antoine Fuqua has never failed us yet. So I'm really curious to see how this is going to pan out.
Yeah, definitely, especially knowing his legacy as the King of Pop. And of course, you're playing your uncle, so everybody's going to be really watching with a watchful eye.
I'm curious. I mean, the soundtrack is going to really reintroduce a lot of people to Michael Jackson's greatness. I think, unfortunately, he was one of those artists who kind of got swept in the witch hunt when there was so much going on with him. But what's really ironic is I was watching another documentary probably a couple weeks ago that was chronicling. It was a European documentary, and it was just saying how when Michael was around the history era, he was at his second peak internationally. So it's like so here we were dealing with Scream and Earth Song and whatnot, which were popular songs, but really didn't match the catastrophic sales of Thriller or whatnot. But those songs were huge over there, and so they were saying it only made sense that he decided to launch that tour over there for that very reason because his success hadn't really waned that much over there. So I found that really intriguing because I was touring at the time, so I really wasn't aware of how popular he was at the time in Europe and England, but apparently it was like his second coming over there.
And speaking of Europe and England, we were talking about New Jack Swing earlier. It's very cool to hear how a lot of those international countries would adapt the US New Jack Swing sound and give it a cultural spin and flavor, like such acts such as Rhythm and Bass out of the UK. They gave us Wayne Hector. If you know Wayne Hector, he wrote Swear It Again for Westlife, a lot of those pop acts for Ireland and Britain, and you had Emanate out of the UK that recut Happy by Surface, which was originally done by British group High Tension, for those that don't know, and just how it seemed like back then, because with no social media, no internet, a lot of US labels really weren't checking on international acts like
Right.
that. And when I interviewed KG from Emanate, he had told me that when they were looking to break into the US market, they had an opportunity to do a remix for Happy with Biggie, but I guess the UK label subsidiary of Columbia didn't really see the need to put a rapper on in order to break them to the US. Because I think the only traction they got over here was the I Got a Little Something for You record that was on the Bad Boy soundtrack. But, needless to say, it was great to see a lot of those international acts have some breakthrough over here in the States, such as Soul to Soul, Brand New Heavies. Like I said, Emanate had a little traction here. Then, of course, it really got kicked off when the Spice Girls really exploded over here in the US in 97, 98.
Yeah, and then Craig David came around 2000 something.
Yeah,
I think like
2000, 2001 with Born to Do It.
it was really interesting because that was I started going back overseas a lot because I had family that's British, so I would go overseas like every summer and whatnot. And what was interesting was that we would redo a lot of the songs would get redone or they would have their own version of it. But the ironic thing is we didn't get as much we didn't get as much of their stuff as they got of ours, which was I found kind of interesting. Like there was that song that group Divine that did lately.
Mhm.
Like Samantha Mumba had success with it over there. And then of course Brandy and I'm not Brandy, Monica and Eternal both did Angel of Mine, which was and theirs was popular over there. And then Silk had Freak Me here, and they had a group called Another Level that
Mhm.
did it over there. So I mean, so it was just like there and it was always roughly about the same time and they never really changed anything. When you listen to the one version and the other version, they sound exactly the same. So I just found it really interesting. And like when the Spice Girls came, that just blew the door right open. I mean, unfortunately for girl groups, it shut the door closed because we really hadn't had any like as far as girl groups go, there hasn't really been too many that have been and they're granted there's one now Flow that's really good but because I guess America is going to associate girl groups with the Spice Girls still there's a lack of wanting to bring it back over here even boy band like it's really slowed down that manufacturing process of just cranking out boy band, girl band, girl band, girl band has really slowed down. And I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse because we got some really creative stuff out of that era.
Yeah, I like Flow with some of the stuff I've heard from them. They definitely studied the US R&B girl groups, TLC, SWV, In Vogue, and all of those groups that came out of there. And then you forgot to mention we had Blue covering Too Close by Next.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And they did and they also did a remake of 112 Dance with You recently. So I mean they've got so many different the respect and appreciation for American music is really clear, and they've chosen some classics when they do redo them. I mean, they don't pick the crap. I mean, they
Mhm.
pick what I remember as being bangers when I was growing up. So and I just think that there's a tendency from looking at the UK music scene versus the US music scene. I think one of the things that's different is they don't really have the same genre specific radio programming that we do. Like they'll have one or two, like I think that Radio One and BBC One and all these other stations, Capital
Mhm.
Radio, and
Mhm.
they everything. And so there's a lot of opportunity for different types of singers and different type of artists to get some shine. Whereas here we've got the R&B and then we got adult contemporary and the da 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 and the da 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 da. And if you don't fit in, then you're a radio programming nightmare, and the opportunities for you to get on is really going to be difficult. And now that we've got streaming, it's created an opportunity that wouldn't have been there for those artists who don't fit into radio programming. So we've got like Lil Nas X who would have gotten caught in that crossfire. They wouldn't have known where to service them. And so I think that's one of the interesting things that's going on now as far as radio and the opportunity to be different and to be unique and to try and to build and to capitalize off of that. is probably more likely to happen now than probably ever in music that I recall ever seeing.
Right, because I had a chance to interview TC Tompkins, who was an industry promo man at various record labels, and he was the promo man that was responsible for breaking Sade in the US, and how when they were breaking her, he had to explain to her, you got to play the radio game here in the States, because like how you mentioned, radio over in the UK is very freeform, where it's just an iPod on shuffle, whereas over here, like you said, you got your different formats, top 40, urban, AC, hot AC, and you gotta play to this particular crowd before going to that other crowd. And that was kind of almost the strategy that Clive used in Breaking Whitney, because when You Give Good Love first came out, he knew that this was a straight up R&B single, of course, with production by Kashif, written by Lala. We knew that that record was going to play to the R&B audience. So we're going to open up with that as the intro to introduce it to the R&B audience. And then we're going to come with the pop stuff. And once the pop stuff hits, we can work it on urban, top 40, and adult contemporary if we wanted to. But then as we saw when she got booed infamously at the Soul Train Music Awards, that she went too far pop. And that's why Clive went and got LA and Babyface for the I'm Your Baby Tonight album in 89. They went back to R&B audience.
The thing is, like, I forever will think that Whitney is probably the single greatest talent vocally we've ever had on this planet. Like, I'll go to my grave saying that. But what's interesting is that with Whitney, Clive Davis is a mastermind at taking the right song and putting it with the right person. He had, like, being like taking a lot of the songs that she had done on her first album, and a lot on the second one were remakes. Like and Saving Out My Love for You, like that was an old Marilyn McCoo song. And so I remember that. My dad had that album, and then Greatest Love of All, of course, George Benson. And How Will I Know, that was written for Janet. The two Shannon Rubicam, and I forgot.
On Boy Meets Girl.
Yep. They wrote How Will I Know for Whitney, and they wrote I Want to Dance with Somebody. And so it's like but just knowing that Saving All My Love for You, even though it didn't work the first time, he knew that with this voice though it may work, and it did. And the same thing with George Benson with Greatest Love of All. It was a hit R&B. Like my school choir sang it when I was in like the second grade. So I remember a lot of I remember that it was a theme song for the Muhammad Ali movie. But then to take it and put it with Whitney was just something just genius. And I was reading that when he saw her at Sweetwater's, that's what she was singing. I was like, oh, okay. And then, I mean, just I think when she got booed, I don't think people stopped liking Whitney. I think people liked Whitney. I just don't think they liked what she was doing musically because people were still, she still had her fan base. People still they still stood for Whitney. It's just that we just didn't like. I'm not saying me. I mean like we as Black folks, we just didn't like the didn't we almost have it all and so emotional area. That was when she started falling off of R&B listeners. But we always liked Whitney. Like when she would perform live, she would do a completely different version of that song and wear it out. And that was and when you look at her audiences, when you look back at a lot of the footage from that, it was a lot of Black folks. So it wasn't that they didn't like Whitney. They just weren't too big of fans of like the music she was doing. And by the time she got to I'm Your Baby Tonight, I remember that being an integral period because we had been hearing a lot about Whitney's new record. And then Mariah Carey came out with Vision of Love at the same time. And I remember my parents thinking that was Whitney's new song. I distinctly remember them hearing it and thinking it was Whitney. And I knew it wasn't, but I could see how you could think it was. And so then we got somebody else who built a career. Then we had, how I said, Janet kind of defined that era by who came after her. Then we started seeing it with Whitney. Then you started seeing all these other people who came out who followed the blueprint. I think Celine Dion followed the blueprint. I mean, like even a lot of the songs she did were covers. So Tommy Mottola did the same thing with Celine that he did with Whitney, that Clive Davis did with Whitney. So I mean, it was just like one of those things where there's this strong imprint that's made, and nothing makes me prouder as a person of color to see the impressions that different artists have made historically, musically, and not just musically, but politically and creatively. that the tide of the world would be completely different if we hadn't been there. So I just think that that's a very integral point to really rest on and just admire and respect artists, even if you don't like it, or even if you're not a big fan of theirs. I still give them their respect and appreciate what they do.
Right. And I didn't know until you told me that Saving All My Love was originally done by Marilyn McCoo. For those that don't know who Marilyn McCoo is, look up Fifth Dimension.
Yep. She was doing Solid Gold at the time.
Yeah.
Like yeah, and then she did Whitney did All the Man That I Need, which was a remake. That was Linda Clifford and Sister Sledge even did a version of that. So I mean, so it's like so a lot of the different so Clive he took these songs and just stored them in his mental Rolodex and just said, you know what, I like this song, I'm gonna try it again and give it a second win. And he was right because Whitney tore the roof off of All the Man That I Need. I think that's probably one of her single best vocals on the song of her career.
Right. And then reading Clive Davis's memoir, the one artist that he had that kind of sort of molded that marketing mindset for Whitney was Radio and Ray Parker Jr. Because not a lot of people talk about Ray Parker Jr. and what he did for the industry with Radio, plus his solo work. And he's more than just Ghostbusters and all of those other records. Because if you look at Mr. Telephone Man, that was originally done by an artist by the name of Junior Tucker. It really wasn't a big hit for Junior Tucker, but he later ended up cutting it on New Edition and it became a smash for them.
Yep, and it doesn't sound too much different either. Like when I listened to it, there was a period when Ray Parker was really the man as far as crafting really strong melodies and songs. He kind of reminded me when Neo was having his big production phase. It kind of reminded me of that Ray Parker era where the songs were very, very R&B rooted, but they were also very pop friendly and they were very strong melodically. And I think that's why those songs like A Woman Needs Love, just like Unless Like You Do, like all those songs, I think that's why they resonated so much because they had the R&B pocket where you could get your groove in and the melody was really easy to interpolate or to interpret. So I mean, it was just like those songs were crafted for success, and Neo kind of replicated that same industry model with a lot of songs he was doing at the time.
Yeah, so it's funny to see how he was originally signed to Columbia under his birth name, and the project ended up getting shelved. And then he later ended up coming out a couple years later with In My Own Words, was So Sick and everything. But I think really the launching point for him was when Let Me Love You for Mario became Mario's lead single off Turning Point, and that became a worldwide smash for Mario and really put Neo on the map. Because I remember when Neo first dropped, he had that Stay With Me record with Petey Crack, and that was kind of like a minor R&B hit. But once So Sick launched, that was really when everybody started to say, okay, this boy is something. And then, of course, all the songs that he wrote for all the other artists where, okay, we got to take him seriously.
Yeah, and that was another situation where somebody was really doing some business overseas before they got here. Like I remember when Neo first came out, like I remember he was they were pushing him a lot overseas. Him and Jason Derulo, they were pushing both of them really strong in the beginning. And I had heard of Jason Derulo there before I heard of him here. And just to go back to something, I was reading something that kind of caught me by surprise, and I wasn't really aware of it. But when Clive Davis signed Phyllis Hyman, that was who he really wanted to take in the Whitney direction. But she was like, no. So I thought that was really interesting that in his mind when he first signed her, he had the whole image and what he ultimately did with Whitney, he had that in mind with her. And she was more grounded and more rooted and was like, I'm not moving. I'm staying right where I am. This is my style. And it's the most up simple he got out of her was you know how to love me. But she was like, no, I'm more regimented here. And so that was like the push and pull of their dynamic the entire time she was with Arista. So I found that was kind of interesting because that was something I really didn't know.
I didn't really know that either, but I felt vocally she was the one artist that labels didn't really know what to do with. Like you said, she was very strong and wanting to be firmly planted. And this is what I do. I don't want to go on this side. I know my base. I know my core.
I mean, and there's something to be said for that, but then there's something to kind of when you become a record when you sign a major label deal, in essence, you become a product. No matter how you try and cut it and spin it, you do. And so it's like my dad, he was a session musician on a lot of old disco songs. My dad told me that when you go into the music industry, you have two choices. You can either one, stick to your guns and go about it trying to be a creative individual that reflects your personality and share your essence with the world through your music and your art, in which case it might not be the biggest success, but at least you stuck to your guns. Or you can just do it to be famous. And then you go with what needs to be done. You don't necessarily, the personal integrity isn't the strongest thing, but people will know your name and you'll sell a lot of records. So he said, so you got to pretty much decide which way you want to go. And when I look back at the artists that I've had the most respect for, that probably find their spot in my music collection the most, it's probably been that first group. A lot of people that I listen to aren't necessarily the ones that everyone's going to know, but they've laid an indelible influence, and a lot of people still reference them. It's just that we don't necessarily hear about it, and to me, that's more important.
Right, and you mentioned your dad being a session musician. What were some of the records that he ended up playing on?
Well, my dad was in the Gary Thompson Empire. They had like the one that they were credited as being the first million-selling disco song. It was a song called 7654321 Blow Your Whistle. And what was interesting about that song is that it was covered by a group called the Rim Shots at the same time. So there was like two different competing versions that were out at the time. And so my dad was really being pissed about that. And a lot of those disco groups would moonlight and change their names. So there was one group that had what's it I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, I remember like a lot of those like I said, those disco groups, or they would sign a record deal as one conglomerate where there would be a group of session musicians and it was so production driven at the time that these group of guys would get a record deal, and then they would just do one album and just let it lapse, and then they'll sign another record album somewhere else, and then they'll be the same the same core group of guys, but they'll just have a different name now. And he was saying like that happens a lot. Even with there was a song, it was an instrumental, Spring something by it was like an Italian guy. It was kind of like it kind of puts you in the mind of Barry White song Love, the Love's Theme. It was a song like that. My dad was on that. I forgot the name of the it's like I'll look it up. But that was on that. And it was really interesting period growing up, because I remember my dad would go to, there was a studio in Midtown called the Hit Factory at the time, and they had like the big production rooms where they would have all the instruments in one room, and my dad would sit me in a stool in the corner because he was not paying for a babysitter. So I would just like sit there and just like watch all this stuff go on. And it was really interesting because when that integral moment when disco died, I remember it going from being a musician that everybody would call you in to do a session with to not calling you at all. So it was just this really interesting dynamic, and it just shows that how the music industry tide can sweep the pendulum can sweep any way. But that's when being aware of what type of artist you are and what your abilities are and what you can contribute musically come into play. Because a good singer is a good singer. You don't have to change. The times are going to come back to you. So I mean, and even with musicians, like we how many people have we seen have had quote unquote comebacks? It's not that they ever left; they're always there. It's just that the tides of music just swifted one way, and they were withstanding and strong in their talent, and it just swung its way back to them.
Right, and it's funny how you mentioned how when technology came in, the studio musician pretty much went by the wayside. Because if you listen to a lot of those early Sugar Hill records, Rapper's Delight, and all those records that came out of there, they had an in-house band that was playing on those records. But once you started having the different machines coming in, such as the DMX, the Oberheim, the 808, 909, then they said, "Oh, we can replace all of y'all with this one machine, and it saves us money."
You spot on there, because like right around that same period, like the late 70s, is when artists became, I'm not gonna say disposable, but I'll just say not as important. Because even with the Sugar Hill Gang, a lot of people didn't realize that was kind of like not necessarily a Milli Vanilli situation, but one of those situations where they had heard Silver Robinson had heard somebody else doing, it was a different party or some set where she heard somebody else doing something similar. It was like a party where they were playing the Chic instrumental and we're doing a rap over it. And so she decided, okay, let's find a way to make our own version. She auditioned for those guys. So I mean, so it's just like, so it was kind of like more like a Village People situation where they auditioned and got these different characters to do the song, but a lot of the lyrics weren't really theirs. They were just reinterpreting what they had been given. I mean, so it's like that was one of those other periods where a woman, a woman of color, was the genius behind all of that. I mean, and I think Sylvia Robinson is another person who doesn't get the credit that they deserve. I mean, like she had like a couple of hits on her own, but as far as being a creative mind and being able to put certain things together and anticipate what a trend is going to be and then jump on it, that's what a mogul is. And I think that it's really sad that like when we hear different people's names, hers doesn't come up. But there wouldn't have been the Sugar Hill Gang had it not been for her. So I mean, so it's just like it's just so many different people who laid an indelible influence that I think are whose names we should repeat and we should speak louder on. Because I get sometimes I get really annoyed when I'm sitting with my friends and we'll have a conversation about something like Beyonce doing a country song, and they think that that's some genre groundbreaking ordeal. And I'm like, no, Black folks have been doing country forever. There's been tons of them, and so I mean, it's just a situation of if we really want to find that source of inspiration, we just gotta like look for it. They're out there. We just have to step outside of what we're used to and just spread our wings and just start listening to different things and embracing different ideas and different approaches. And that's the only way to progress anything forward. And I think once there's going to be another, I think the trap music scene was probably one of the last things that I've seen a big sweeping movement on where a lot of people just jumped onto it. And that, in my opinion, doesn't take the most creativity, but it just shows that all we need is a creative mind and somebody with an opportunity and a venue and some talent to spread on top of it, and we can introduce something new. I'm waiting for the next big thing to come around.
Right, but as we're taking a look at the modern industry, the algorithm is pretty much the new gatekeeper, whereas the industry is pretty much wanting sure bets and don't want to take risk on anything new. Or if you are somebody new, you got to have numbers, whether it be views, followers, streams, and something to say you're gonna at least have us make a return on investment. So it's almost really pushing out the artist that is, you may have potential, you may need a little bit more seasoning. The following may not be there, but the payoff is coming in the long run. But we all want the payoff now because we want a return on an investment, and the algorithms are going to dictate what should we sign, what should we push.
It is a benefit and there's a drawback to that. Like the benefit to it is the whole days of having to wait around and hope a record label found you and sending demos and just begging for somebody to give you an opportunity. Those days aren't really what's going on anymore. Now you don't even really need a record label to compete. You just need your own following. So that's the good side to it. The bad side to it though is the attention span of the audience now. I think mosquitoes have a stronger lifespan than the audience has attention span, and then the conversation becomes. I was watching a dissertation where someone was saying that are there going to be any credible, long-standing talents that are going to be around in 20 years from this generation? I mean, like when you look at the pool of talent now, like we still talk about George Michael and Michael Jackson and Prince and Whitney and Janet and like these enduring talents who went against the grain when it was a lot harder. Like for what George Michael did as far as being popular R&B and pop, that really wasn't something that was common. I mean, like there was once every now and then there was somebody, but then like the other artists that I named, people still look at them in reverential manner now. But 10, 20 years from now, who we're gonna look at now? Doja Cat. I mean, it's like like there's it becomes a question of is there like yeah the audience isn't wrong when they support what they support. If enough people like it, there's got to be something behind it. But then at the same time, it's like, are they gullible? Where it's like you can force feed if you make something trend and make something popular and throw something interesting on top of it and have it catch on. Yeah, it'll be the flavor of the moment. But is it going to be something that people are going to look back on in 5 years and say that really changed the game? So I sit and think of that every now and then. And then I was reading an article that was saying how on the female artist standpoint, where's the next big female pop star? Like, and who's the Normani? Like they've been waiting for her for like 5 years. I mean, so it's like it's just one of those things where I get curious because cause even though I'm growing older, I'm still a music fan. So I like to see what's going on, and I like to try and keep up with what's going on. And I get curious sometimes. I'm wondering, like, okay, on the next throwback radio station in like 5 years, what are they going to play as a throwback then? What Freakum Dress? I mean, it's like I just wonder, like, what's going to be the next thing and where's it going, and are any of them are going to be any enduring talents? Like that concerns me because so many people are being cranked out. Are they thinking about their future? Are they concerned about the fact that the music trend is going to change again on them and they might not withstand? Are they really thinking about music, or are they thinking about being famous? I mean, it's like so many things are going into it, and as an avid music listener, I kind of take those questions seriously because I like to see what's going on. I want to know what's going to be there.
Right, and you mentioned Prince and how back during the old days of getting into the music industry, it was a lot harder to be your own boss, do it yourself, because when they first got those demos, Warner from I think Owen Huzzy, who was his original manager, they said we like the stuff, but we want to have somebody else produce them, and I think they wanted to link them up with Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire, but Prince stood 10 toes down, was like, no, I do it all. And he did it all. He did it his way. He might have ruffled some of the old school industry's feathers because he was calling them out on their BS and the hypocrisy of the industry, and really stood in the face of, oh, you're going to scrawl slave on your face when you're in the middle of negotiating with a label because they wouldn't let you own the rights to your own name. So he was pretty much champion the do it yourself before it became popular with the internet. Because think about it, he was doing Emancipation, Crystal Ball on his website before anybody else thought about let me go direct to consumer.
I think another thing that is a sheer testament to Prince's greatness is he was 19 when when he was doing his shopping for a major label deal. I think it came out when he was 20. 19. I mean, like, and that sure his talent, that sure what he had to offer, that he didn't relent on his approach. I don't think there's anybody, like, I can't think of and like Sacco Barrow, who has had the cojones to even think of trying that now. And I mean, there's a lot of people who just throw things together and they might have a viral hit, but they don't play like a gazillion instruments and write their own music and crank out songs at the speed of light, and then produce and write songs for other people that also become hits, and then open their own major studio that develop films. I mean, like, I can't think of anybody that has had that type of critical success and across the board. That's what I'm saying. Like, well, I don't think there. I mean, I'm not gonna say there'll never be, but I can't see there being somebody with that business acumen that young, getting started and creating and giving the world as much credible art as Prince has. So that's what gets me curious. Like, who's going to be next? Like, even I would see Madonna a couple of weeks, like a month or so ago, and I was looking back at her catalog, and I was like, a lot of people had a lot to say about her, but I don't think that she's become like the biggest selling female artist in the world ever. And when I look at a lot of the things that she's done, I'm like, people might laugh at her, might have something to say about her, but the woman really broke a lot of ground. And then it's like looking at her career, and then looking at a lot of the people who are developing their careers now, it's light years away from each other. I mean, but I don't think she slept. I mean, she was just cranking them out, and then and think a lot of people, like I said, people have something to say about her, but it only seems to motivate her even more. And she's another one where you can see who clearly came after her, because she kind of built this pivotal point in music and pop history where she did something that was a little different with the skill set or the talent that she did have. Even with what she didn't have, she was able to supplement it and create something that a lot of, like, there's not one person that I know. They could be from the Fifth Avenue Upper East Side to the hood. Everybody's gonna have a song by Madonna they like. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just one of those situations where we don't see that hunger in our artists now, and it kind of disappoints me.
Yeah, because when you think about when Madonna first came out, she was getting play on club R&B radio with Burning Up, Holiday, and then of course when Like a Virgin came out, production done by Nile Rodgers, she got that cosign and stamp. She got play on more pop, more R&B, staple on MTV, and then of course everything that came after that, and then she went full heavy urban when she came out with Bedtime Stories.
Mhm. Which is like one of her one of her best, most cohesive works to me. That and Erotica, like those were the two records of hers I really liked from beginning to end. But then I was reading somewhere that she did almost did one misstep that I thought was kind of funny when she did the record with Timbaland, Hard Candy. That originally that was to be called the Black Madonna because she was going to call it Black Madonna because it was the song that she did with like a lot of R&B producers and stuff, and she got talked out of it. So I was like, it's a good thing she didn't because that probably would have been the thing that killed her. But just her longevity and just seeing where she came from, like she wasn't supposed to be, she wasn't supposed to have the career she had. Like when she got Seymour Stein to just barely stick his hand out the hospital bed to sign her for that record deal for one song, she really took it and ran with it. And she was able to build that momentum and create that interest and that buzz, not just sonically but visually. And now the opportunity for people to do that is so much harder. Like number one, she had the benefit of having the MTV era where she could experiment visually, where she could put a face and an art to her sound. And then there were power, quote unquote, format radio stations popping up everywhere at that period, where like the power, every market had Power 96 and Power 93. And it was basically an opportunity for R&B songs that for I'll just be frank, for a white artist who did R&B type songs and a black artist who did pop songs. That's what the power format was for. Because like you had Jermaine Stewart who would get play on that station. You had Whitney, you had George Michael. You had like a lot of different artists who fall under that umbrella, who were in that power format was what was really popular. Those markets were introduced so many different songs, and that was when the Casey Kasem's Top 40 was popular and that whole thing. And she had that benefit. Now, not so much because there's a lot of the songs that are ranking the upper realm of the charts aren't the ones you hear a lot on the radio, which is really interesting because it's more about streaming now and YouTube play and going viral, and those things don't tabulate the same way that radio airplay does. So a song could get very minimal radio play like WAP that could hit number one purely based off of video and streaming and downloads and stuff. So it's like a completely different market now that has ever been in existence before. And once again, it takes me back to wondering who's going to withstand all of that to be an enduring talent. Because it's changed.
Right, and it was back during the era where, for some of you that may not remember or know, certain labels they would have alternate versions of videos where one would go to MTV, one would go to BET. You'll
Right.
see the BET version on BET or other outlets that cater towards urban audiences, and you see the pop version. Case in
Right.
point, New Kids on the Block. They did a version of Please Don't Go Girl that you only saw on BET and on urban video outlets. This was when Columbia Records was still pushing them as an R&B act because they were signed to the R&B division at Columbia when Larkin Arnold was over there and Cecil Holmes. And then when a pop station out the blue in Florida started playing Please Don't Go Girl and Columbia got wind, that was when they reshot the video over at Coney Island. And that was when the pop money came in. And I want to say not a lot of people give credit to Maurice Starr for what he did with the songs that he did for New Edition, discovering New Edition, and then creating New Kids on the Block, who, when you think about it in today's time, a black man creating the world's biggest pop group who set the stage for every pop group to come after him, from Take That over in the UK, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, 90 Degrees, and how that all spawned from a black man, and how New Kids, they were originally marketed as an R&B group, but once the pop world got a hold of them, it was a wrap because nobody ever thought of like, hey, let's take the stylings of the Osmonds and mix with the sound of New Edition, and it worked like gangbusters.
And it was just another another situation where like somebody I can't remember who said it, but they said they love our rhythm but not our blues. So I mean, it was like one of those situations where New Edition they could have totally gone further than they did. I think they totally could have. Like the momentum, the interest was there, and their shows were doing really well. There was another group that was doing really well overseas, but a lot of the financial strife. It was the first time for too many people. They didn't really understand what was going on, and their management didn't really know what was going on. So like, and then so many things were changing and going on behind the scenes with them that it was going to inevitably implode unless they made some changes. And and then to see that what they had started was laid such an indelible influence for people like New Kids on the Block to come out. Because I remember when New, if my memory serves me correctly, Please Don't Go Girl was out before it was out on the Hanging Tough record. Like it was like 'cause it was really somewhere else. It was another album before that, if my memory serves me correctly, because the version that I remember seeing was a album where they were a lot younger. And then I remember seeing the Hanging Tough record with Please Don't Go Girl on it, and it was a little bit older, but yeah, I just remember that just really kicked in, and I think that the single after that was Hanging Tough, which just really went no The Right Stuff. Um, then that just kind of pushed it in a different direction, and they really, like you said, they really did kick in the boy band thing because I was reading that Joey Louis Walsh in the UK, when he started getting we started kicking boy bands off overseas. It was based on what he saw happen with New Kids on the Block, and then take that kicked in, and then you had um, Westlife, and then Boyzone, and
Five.
like that. I think that was Simon's group. And then they started doing the girls, and then of course the Spice Girls, and they had Girls Aloud, and
All
Sugar.
Saints.
Yep, and the Saturdays. I mean, like they just really they do. I mean, the UK and Europe do boy band, girl band like nobody else. But then those groups, S Club 7, I forgot about them. They all inevitably come here. They drop their one song or the one crossover hit that they get over here because they just put enough momentum behind them to get the first single over here, and then after they realize how much work it's going to take with them not living here, they kind of just drop the ball. Like this essentially seems like what they all do, or most of them. So it's just interesting that like with the way that music's going and kind of out of the old theory that if you want to get 10 years ahead of the game musically, you just got to go 10 years back. So, and even we think now, if we went back 10 years, that's kind of what's going on now again. People are really referencing the 90s a lot more, or the early 90s, or they call the knots. They're really referencing that a lot more. And even then, there's some glimmer of possibility that there's going to be something, there's some credible talent in there. Because I start seeing different people like with SZA. It's a credible talent under there. I mean, there's so many people that there's another guy he does a lot of production. People Leon, I can't remember his last name, but he had a song Crash and Burn I really like that I heard recently. So I mean, there's a lot of different people who are really doing some interesting stuff, but because the music industry model is different, the chances of us hearing and seeing them are a lot less likely. So it's kind of like, what do we do then? Do we find a way to champion those artists on our own? How do you make something go viral? I mean, like those are all those conversations that I think our people are starting to have because it's really affecting the algorithm of what get cranked out for us to hear and absorb.
Right, and it's funny how you mentioned how Europe they crank out pop like nobody's business. Sweden too, with Ace of Base and Robin and the Sharon pop era with Max Martin, the late Dennis Pop, or Herbie Kreislow, who I had a chance to interview, and how for Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, it was their training ground going over to Europe and seasoning before they broke big in the States, and how when you would get those European imports, there'll be a couple of cuts not on the US album that were only on the international release of the album. And the international fans got to bite the apple twice when those groups finally broke in their home country of America because they get to get the European versions of the albums before we knew them over here in the US. And then, of course, the worldwide success once they broke in the States.
Right. A testament to that is there's an artist that I had an opportunity to work with that I was a fan of who's immense internationally. That was Kylie Minogue. When she was in the market for getting songs submitted for her 16th record Tension, she opened up the production submission so that a lot of different people could submit songs to possibly produce for her to do. And I had submitted one with my production partner at the time. It was called Feel the Love. And it was a song that I had written at a friend of mine's house. Like we would have gatherings at their house and just hang out or whatnot. And I was sitting and watching my pool of friends just enjoy themselves. So I just sat in the corner and started just drawing out these lyrics to the song, which was about enjoying the people that you're with and how you respect them immensely and how they make you stronger and make you better. And so I submitted it when I got to work. And the next thing I found out was that she was interested in covering it. So she ultimately did. It didn't make the track listing, but I do have the recording of it. And there's a couple other songs that they're talking about doing a Japanese reissue with 6 additional songs on them, with that one being one of them. So just watching the way her career laid itself out. I mean, and now she's getting the respect that she's due. Because like I remember when a lot of people would look at me and was like, "You like her?" Da 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 da, because she wasn't as popular here. But she's been a consistent mainstay over there for like forever. And just now with her getting winning the Grammy and then the Brit Award for like the Global Icon and Billboard's Global Icon Award, she's getting the recognition that she's due for being consistent. And that's what I think a artist should be going after. Like, yeah, like you might have some days where you have to fight hard some days and you want to berate yourself for when things don't go exactly the way that you want for them to. But that's the business. You have up and downs, you just got to stick in there. So it's like with artists like that, that's when I think the respect is due to them because they stuck with it and they were who they were and they didn't want to be what they didn't want to be and they made mistakes and they did hits and they had flops and but they used to have a learning curve to become a better artist and ultimately they win in the end. I think that's what an artist is.
Yeah, because Kylie Minogue, she's been doing her thing since the Aussie soap Neighbors, and she had the cover of Locomotion. She had Look My Way, where if you listen to that, you could tell
Whispers.
whoever produced that record, I believe it probably was Stock Aitken Waterman. They probably was listening to Ellie and Faith and what they did with the Whispers and Rocksteady, because that record sounded very similar to Rocksteady.
You're totally right. It totally did. And then I think that the record after that, they even sampled Control in some of the songs, and then one of them sampled the Mary Jane Girls. I mean, and these were songs that weren't, they were under, people knew them, but Janet wasn't nearly as popping over there as she is over here. So like, so to sample a lot of those songs was really integral. But I was telling somebody that like just recently, Madonna and Kylie formed together at one of Madonna's shows, and their fan bases have equally been championing behind them for like 40 years, 30 years. And I was telling someone that ironically they started the same way. They both got that one record deal where nobody thought they were really going to do much. And they kind of withstood the times and changed their look and changed their career and adjusted everything. And they really got this underlying fan base going where they just were able to withstand the time and maintain a career. So to see them on stage together singing I Will Survive kind of was like that moment where it was just like, okay, that'll be a pop music moment they'll talk about in like 30 years because like they're two strong testaments of what could possibly happen if you stick to your guns and you put some talent behind it. I mean, neither one of them would be the way where they are if they weren't talented. So I mean, it's just like just looking at that and then on the male artist side, I mean, we have like with Usher. I mean, like the fact that Usher like withstood the career and became this icon now that for our parents, he would kind of be like in the Marvin Gaye category, like somebody who stuck around and is that relevant and that respected. Sure, yeah, has had his controversies, but he's put out good music on top of those controversies. So I mean, it's just like a strong testament of what can happen. But so again, it takes me back to the question: who's going to do that now? Like, who's going to be the next upcoming artists that are going to be those people that we're going to have these same conversations about? I have no idea.
Right. Well, in your opinion, who was the one male pop R&B group you felt should have had bigger success, but for reasons or other didn't?
All for one. That I want to say, I'm calling me bad. I'm sorry. Calling me bad was her name. That was one of those groups where I was just like, I just knew they had it mapped out for them. I mean, like they dropped some bangers. I mean, like that. I think every single that they were dropping was like a hit. And they had the pop appeal and the R&B appeal at the same time. Like like I Adore Me More and I Want to Sex You Up, and like they really were cranking both cylinders. And it was an interesting time because I think their only competition was Boys to Men. Like they were like the two top groups at that period. And so I was just, and so I expected more from them, and they just like fell off. I expected, they were a group I really thought was going to stick around. And who else? I really expected Silk to stick around longer. I thought Next was going to stick around longer. Um, yeah, but then again, something about the whole ensemble implodes. I don't know what it is, but of recent memory, I would say Colored Me Bad. I really expected them to stick around. They had it all. They came on BET, they were on MTV, they were on pop stage, they were on R&B stations. I was watching Showtime at the Apollo when they performed, and everybody went up for them. I mean, like they really had it all. I don't know what happened there. I think one of them had an attitude problem and was beefing with the other one, and one of them was a songwriter. I mean, it was like a big mess, but they were a really talented group and they really could sing. So I was
Yeah,
upset they didn't last.
yeah, I'm really good friends and had a chance to interview on a few occasions KT from Color Me Bad, and he was sharing with me that because of the success of I Want to Sex You Up, they had to go into the studio to cut the CMB album in 6 weeks because everybody was just buying the single of Sex You Up and not the soundtrack for New Jack City. So there was already a lot of buzz from them off of that because Sex You Up was on the lead single for the New Jack City soundtrack, which the movie was hot as fish cakes in the streets. And then that set up their debut for the CMB album with, like you mentioned, I Adore Me and More, All for Love, everything that came after that. Then they put out Time and Chance, and after that, Wildflower. And then I'm sure you probably know the singer Lucky Day, right?
Right.
You know his manager is Sam from Color Me Bad.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I knew that one of them is married to Tamira Gray.
Yeah,
Um,
that's Sam.
okay, that's it. Okay. And so like, yeah, I didn't know that there was the Lucky Day affiliation. Now he's somebody that I hope sticks around. Because he's somebody who's got it all too. But then again, it's like they can create a sonic masterpiece, but if it doesn't catch on with the demographic and the algorithm now, it's like we'll never hear it, or like, and that's what makes it so sad. But which group would you say would be one of those groups that you thought that you would expect it more from?
For me, I always put this group, New Edition is my top group. This group is underneath them out of Pasadena, California. You probably know what I'm talking about. One of the members became part of the Underdogs, wrote Gas to Be for B2K, wrote No Air for Jordan Sparks, Chris Brown, and I'm talking about Troop.
I had to dug them. Like when I saw Janet, also open that. Like I remember Spread My Wings and I did the cover of the Jackson song. I mean,
Yeah.
I like them. Like they there was there's another group. There's another group that you remember Dallas Austin's group, the Highland Place Mobsters.
Ooh, very underrated. I had a
Yeah,
chance to interview Loke from Highland Place, and man, that album was so underrated. Let's Get Naked, If You
yeah,
Stay. I didn't realize that they did Let's Take a Dip first before A Few Good Men did. And I was like, yo, so very underrated. But I think the thing with them was I think Dallas was so white hot at the time with his production, with his stuff from ABC, Boys
right.
to Men, TLC, that kind of overshadowed everything. But that Highland Place Monster album, that was nothing to play with. Intro
I,
was another group too that I felt should have been bigger.
Yeah, the Highland Place Mobsters. When I first heard Let's Get Naked and it was a song like the Catalogs of Lost Love, that little
Mm-hmm.
interlude.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really expected a lot from them. They kind of had the whole Jodeci thing, except they were more left field. With that Dirt Road White Girl song, when they dropped that as a second single, that's when I was like, oh, I don't know if that's the smartest idea. But that whole album was really tight, and I don't know if it was because Dallas Austin just wasn't able to commit to being a touring act or a promoting act with a group and sustain his production success that he was doing with everybody else. So I know that can be kind of tricky, like when you're the main person behind the console, and then you want to launch a career in front of it. It's like it can be kind of tricky, but he had that was a well-crafted R&B record that I was really upset that people slept on it. I was just like, wow, because it had all the ingredients to be a major success success at the time. And I only saw them do one live act, and that was for like Summer Jams. It was Summer Jams here. That was the only time I saw them perform. And the one guy with the blonde hair was really drunk. Maniac.
Mhm.
He was really drunk. But that was the only time I saw them perform live, and they didn't seem like they were really into it. But because a lot of people didn't know who they were, like they were writing off the whole Dallas Austin name, and people knew who he was, and they sound good when they would harmonize together, but individually it's kind of vocally shaky. But still, I've seen groups that were like that had less to offer than that had more. So I mean, that was a group I was really upset when I saw that they didn't really cross over. I think Tony deserves more respect than they get. Um, and I know that they're trying to, that I don't know if they've already launched it, but I know they were doing like a tour.
They just did that tour with Raphael Sadiq, Dwayne Wiggins, and Timothy Christian Riley, the original three. And that kind of mentions that Foster and McElroy don't get enough credit for what they did with their production with Tony, and they gave us In Vogue.
Yep. And they also gave us what was it was like the crazy it was like a kind of like a comic act. They redid Hair a Weave.
Oh, Bobby Jimmy and the Critters.
Yes, didn't Tommy was possibly have something to do with them. I guess
I think so, because Bobby Jim and the Critters was former radio personality Russ Parr of Russ Parr in the Morning fame, but Foster and McElroy, the stuff that they did on their stuff, Tony, In Vogue, and of course they started off in Club Nouveau,
right.
And how a lot of people don't really talk about Club Nouveau as much and what they did in J. King and how thanks to the resurgence of Why You Treat Me So Bad from I Got Five on it when Jordan Peele had put it in Us, that got a lot of people spiking up and saying, let me go back and take a listen.
Now that's a process that I really am a big fan of. How somebody can dust off a song or something from back in the day and give it a whole new life, and next thing you know, it's a hit again. I was watching it was on Amazon. It was like the film with the black folks that moved into the white area.
Oh,
Uh,
damn.
them, yep. And they played Marsha I forgot the oh no not the Beast Day. They played that in there. I was like, I haven't heard that since I was a kid. And I remember she was Mick Jagger's baby mama, and how he dated her, knocked her up, she had a baby, and then he denied her the baby that for like the longest time, and then dedicated Brown Sugar to her. And so like I remember my dad was telling me the story. And so when my dad was playing the song, it's a very a jungle R&B, it's got samples galore in it. And when I saw that film, I was like, oh wow, that's they used it right at the perfect moment. Or even
Mhm.
recently, that Saltburn movie, how at the end, the big scene where he's like dancing naked all around the mansion, they use Sophie Ellis-Bextor Murder on the Dance Floor. And that was a song that I had heard in England like 20 years ago. But
Mhm.
the fact that they shoehorned that song in at the perfect moment with the perfect scenes, elements going on with the scene, and it just became a hit all over again. And it came here for the first time. So like just seeing that people do that, I think that that's really creative, and it creates a revenue stream for somebody who wouldn't have otherwise
Right.
had. But at the same time, it's like it's showing that the songs that they're using really
Mhm.
weren't big hits, but it shows that it influenced somebody somewhere and resonated with them to the point that when they got the opportunity to use it, they did. I think that's a sign of a creative person and a sign of an enduring piece of art. The fact that that piece of art sustained that amount of time and found itself to be relevant in years later. I think that that's a testament to the song artist and the person who decided to use it.
Right. I was curious, did you ever happen to catch the documentary Nothing Compares about the late Sinead O'Connor?
Yes, I did.
I caught that too, and how I was really young, 5, 6, when Nothing Compares to You exploded for her. That was originally done by Prince
family.
side at the family, which was consisted of St. Paul, I believe. I can't recall. It was Wendy or Lisa's sister, Jerome, Jellybean, and how when Sinead cut "Nothing Compares to You," that became a worldwide smash. But how in that documentary, she was solid, standing 10 toes down, didn't want to play the pop game at all. It was like she just cut that record, didn't expect for it to be that big pop hit. And like how you mentioned, is once you become a cash cow for that label, you got to make some concessions. And if you're not willing to make those concessions, they can make life difficult for you. But Sinead was one to say, no, I'm not going to play the game. I'm going to rip up a picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live. She was speaking on what was going on in the Catholic Church before everybody else did. And she was willing to stand on it and say, I'm not going to sacrifice pop fame for this. I'm going to be me. That's all I know. And you got to give her credit for that she wasn't going to play the game.
Yeah, I think that they collectively should have offered her an apology for really just destroying her career and dragging her name through the mud when it turns out she was right. I mean, it's like, and so that was one of the things. But prior to that, I remember, like I grew up listening to everything. There was not one thing on the musical landscape that I didn't find myself listening to. And I remember when Sinead O'Connor had dropped the Lion in the Cobra record, and she had a song on it called "Put Your Hand." I want your hands on me.
Oh, with
And
MC Light, that was on Nightmare
yeah,
on Elm
yeah,
Street part. I want to say 3.
yep. And to see that was one of when somebody was talking about collaboration, and they were saying how Gwen Stefani and Eve was like the first time they saw a rap girl and a pop girl, and I was like, oh no, I was like Sinead O'Connor and MC Light, and everybody was like, really? I was like, yes, that was like years before that, and that was one of those situations where that was a creative moment when things like that weren't happening. Like we didn't see a marriage of rock and rap. I mean, besides Run DMC and when the Beastie Boys came around, and every now and then you would see glimpses of it, but that was like a really tight song, and I much preferred that Sinead O'Connor record than the one that came after. But she was like a strongly creative person and very ballsy and had a really strong voice, and her musicianship was top notch. And she was like the female version of Bono, like where she was all about like what you could tell when she felt something, and she was somebody who didn't fake the funk. So it's like I was really sad when she passed because I was becoming more and more aware of her mental health problems and whatnot. But she was somebody I was a big fan of. I'd even gone to see her in a concert before when she was doing a theater tour. I saw her at the Fox Theater in Detroit, and she put on a really good show. And I was really upset when she passed. She was kind of like she kind of brought in that whole style that Melissa Etheridge and all of those ladies brought in later. But yeah, Sinead was a real talent. I was real sad to see that.
Right. And it's good to see the resurgence of Tracy Chapman thanks to Luke Combs covering Fast Car, and how a lot of people are going back and digging into Tracy Chapman's catalog and, streaming for Fast Cars growing up. Because I first came up with Fast Cars thanks to Nice and Smooth when they sampled it for Sometimes Around Slow. But just how, because of who's at the moment, is bringing a whole new audience to that particular person. I mean, she performed at the Grammys, and it was her first live performance in decades because she's pretty much been almost reclusive until Luke Combs covered that record. Because I think he said originally he would just do that as a part of his set for his shows in between his own stuff. And then, of course, when he decided to cut it and cover it, he got her permission to do it, and then, of course, made sure she got the royalties from it.
And I didn't want it to be lost that there was there was irony to Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs doing it together at the Grammys, because like you listen to the lyrics of the song, it's literally about like wanting a better life for yourself, and to see Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs from two completely opposite ends of the musical realm come together and sing that song together, it was just showing how that's a unifying thought that everybody wants to have a better life and sustain themselves and find their spot in humanity, and not just exist but thrive. So like to see them singing it together with like a universal message of promise. And that was one of the things, and my friends said I was taking it a bit too seriously. But when I saw them singing together, that's what I saw. And so I thought that was a really strong message for them to put out there, particularly in the current landscape with everything we're going through politically and the unrest and upheaval. It's just, and then the prejudice and imbalance, to see them together singing a song about hope and wanting something better for yourself when nobody, when the tide seems to be against you. I thought that was a really unifying message and something I really enjoyed seeing.
Right. And I made a post not too long ago on Facebook about how I feel that Uptown Records don't get enough credit for the influence that they've had on the music industry. Because if you look back at what they did, with rest in peace Andre Harrell, how cut his teeth working under Russell Simmons with Rush Management, and then later branched out to create an Uptown and gave us rest in peace Heavy D and the boys, rest in peace Trouble T. Roy, MC Trouble, rest in peace. Gave us the girls. Marley Marl was signed to Uptown. Groove Be Chill signed to Uptown. My fellow NC natives, Jodeci, signed to Uptown. Mary J, Uptown. Father MC, Uptown. Gave us New York Undercover. Gave us Strictly Business. And how if it wasn't for Uptown, there'll be no Bad Boy, because Diddy came from that school, and how he pretty much took what he learned at Uptown and applied it to Bad Boy. So can we just talk about the influence of Uptown Records?
Well, I can't traverse anywhere around my neighborhood without having respect for Uptown because that's where I live. I live not too far from where all that started. So like and just going outside and just walking through the neighborhoods and just cutting through 125th Street and coming down St. Nicholas and just passing all those historical landmarks where a lot of those things, a lot of those creative moments were created. It's kind of awe-striking to me because it just makes you just stop and realize that in this very epicenter was where some of the most creative individuals got their opportunity, not just got their opportunity, but created their own opportunity and then took it and just ran with it. I remember when Uptown was really kicking off, and even the when they did the Uptown MTV Unplugged, I really worked my tail off to try to get tickets to go see that when they were filming it at 1515 Broadway. And it was Jodeci and Mary J. Blige and a lot of the Uptown acts performing live acoustically. And I was just so excited to go see it, but I couldn't get tickets. But there are so many moments from songs from Uptown that were sprinkled throughout my childhood. I remember cutting through filming New York Undercover all over here. So it's like that is not too many experiences that I remember going through my life, that period when you're coming in touch with yourself. For me, it was like 1990 through like 98. And that was Uptown's like 89 to like 98. That was when Uptown was at its peak. And just the songs and the fashion and a lot of the styling and the elements that came from it really were the epitome and represented urban life to a T. There was nowhere that you could go where you didn't hear Forever My Lady when that came out. And Mary just like took it and just turned the industry upside down and created a space for female artists that really hadn't existed before. So I mean, it was like there was just something creative about that whole period. And when I heard that Andre Harrell had passed, I was really upset because he was somebody who just fell through the cracks. Like he was somebody that really created a lot of opportunity and a lot of interest and made some creative endeavors that have yet to be duplicated. But his name wasn't one that we were putting any respect on. I mean, and so it's like, and I think that it's when those indelible people pass that we start giving them their flowers. But so I just made a point to myself that I would speak those names of people who influenced me or the people that I remember who I really enjoyed and pass it on to people. Like a lot of my friends, they try to get annoyed from a lot of different things. I would pass them to them, but they take the opportunity and they'll listen to it. And we have music conversations and we talk about history because it's our history. And I just think it's really important that we respect those individuals because think about it, like where would music have gone had it not been for those people? I mean, and it just if they were able to take a lot of those songs from Diddy's catalog and Andre Harrell's catalog and Teddy Riley's catalog and just created this compilation of compilations, it would be hours long. It would probably days long. Every song would be something that you'd be like, oh, that was my joint. I mean, like it would just take you through that place and that element and that time that we all fondly remember. So I think that we need to just respect them a lot more and not be afraid to speak them up. And I say God bless people who decide to sample those songs and give them another life so that people can reference them and then the discussions can start all over again.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, it was a Target commercial. They had used Real Love by
Mhm.
Mary J. Blige in the ad, and it got me thinking to, when I had interviewed Cool Rock Ski from the Fat Boys, and we were talking about how a lot of people didn't really know that that was Prince Marky D along with Corey Rooney that produced a lot of those records, on Mary, on What's the 411. And I was thinking because a lot of people still saw Prince Marky D like Fat Boys Prince Marky D, not really taking him seriously as a producer, songwriter, and that's another album I felt should have been bigger, but wasn't. The Free album by Prince Marky D and the Soul Convention.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, there was always been some artists who, the public just tends to pigeonhole them into one thing. And unfortunately, it doesn't do them any justice that they, don't pet their pastry more, if that makes any sense. Like, I think that a lot of, like, Prince Marky D and like all the other guys say what they should do, let everybody know what you're doing. Like, yeah, they might read your credit and know, but get out there and let your creativity be known. Like, pat yourself on the back, say like, yes, I did that. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with if you were a salesman and you hit quota and you sold 500 cars, you would have no problem in a conversation saying, yes, I sold 500 cars, and people would applaud you for being such a killer salesman. So it's like with the same thing with the music industry. If you created a piece of art or you contributed, made a creative contribution to something that changes the game, and the general John Q. public doesn't know about it, tell us. Because like when we think of Mary J's what's the 411 record, people would think of Diddy and they think of Andre Harrell. But like there were so many other players that were involved in that really made it what it was. People talk about Jeff Redd. I mean, like he had a lot to do with Mary getting to where she was, but he doesn't step up. I mean, I'm sure he does now, but I didn't hear him stepping up saying, "Yes, I'm the one that took her demo and took it to Uptown." I mean, like there's just so many different things that so many different strides that people make that I think that we need to know what those strides are, because those very strides are what encourages and finds their way to a young impressionable person who doesn't think that they can find a way into the music industry, or they don't think opportunities are going to be presented to them where they can get out and make those things work. But when you hear those different stories about those different producers and those different key people and those key figure people who brought element A and element B together and made element C, and that's what the world bought. I think that those are the things that would influence people to want to get out there and try. Like now, at the recording studio I work at, I started, a couple of other people have started a program where we get a lot of 5 or 6 different kids in the neighborhood who are interested in music production, and we start teaching them the basics so that they can understand what they need to do to create their own art and understand what the process entails. And if they have an idea, we'll donate studio time to them so they can make a demo or something and take something and do something with it. Because a lot of the people that we know, like Teddy Riley and all those guys, weren't too much older than the kids that I see bopping around who have a lot of promise and a lot of opportunity, but just don't have a venue to express it. So I think just referencing it, just like you were, and just bringing those names to the forefront and shining some spotlight on it can be the thing that influences people to try now.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but You Can Call Me Crazy on Guy's debut album. You know that was originally supposed to be for I'll Be Sure for In Effect Mode, right?
It sounds like I'll be sure. I think Timmy Gatling, that was when he was still in Guy. I think that was
Mhm.
him. And Timmy Gatling, he was somebody that I ended up meeting years later, and I didn't know that he had produced another like My Lover for Jasmine Guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He did When I See You Smile Again for BBD, him and Alton Wilkie Stewart. But back to You Can Call Me Crazy. I interviewed Kyle West, and Kyle West confirmed that that was supposed to be on In Effect Mode for Al B. But what ended up happening was, I guess Gene Griffith ended up keeping that song for Guy on their album, and they kept Al B on the backgrounds. And this, of course, before Timmy ended up exiting Guy, and they had his vocals on there, but Kyle West is another unsung hero of the New Jack Swing era that doesn't get mentioned enough because we talk about In Effect Mode and how that's one of the landmark albums of R&B. I mean, the work that he and Al B did. I mean, Al B stuff, Jodeci stuff, Tevin Campbell stuff, the girls. I mean, I'll be sure Kyle West, dynamic duo when it came to songwriting and producing.
Yeah, I mean, like that was, like I said, that was that integral period when you could turn on the radio and song after song would be something that would just get you up. And I remember when I was in school, we went to see Al B. Shore and New Edition and Bobby Brown all in concert. And that was one of those things that was one of those moments that I'll totally remember because number one, I could barely hear any of them sing because there's nothing but girls screaming. But two, just the showmanship that was involved and the crafting of the songs was so strong that everybody was singing every word. And I remember even parents would sing those songs because, like I said, something about New Jack Swing that had like the beat that got you going, but it had a strong melodic elements to it, and the lyrics were very smooth, and it was very all the songs were relatable. So anytime any of those songs came on radio, you could expect that there was going to be full blast, everybody singing every word. And even to this very day, I bet you if somebody dropped "You Could Call Me Crazy" or if somebody dropped "Get Off on Your Own Girl" or something like that, everybody would remember every word to it because those songs take you back to that period in time, and that's what classics do.
Yeah, you're one of the lucky few that got to be in attendance during the Heartbreak tour. So, what was it like for you to hear the Heartbreak album for the first time and knowing the transition that New Edition was going through from when Bobby got voted out to Bobby putting out King of Stage and then later Don't Be Cruel, and then the addition of Johnny coming in because Johnny was already a solo artist at that point, putting out the Chemistry album, the debut album, and the duets album with Stacey Ladislaw, and then joining coming into New Edition and adding that element of maturity that I think they were wanting to have after the All for Love album, but didn't know the direction that they were going in. But once Johnny came in and when Jim and Lewis brought their production style to that, it really was where it was a perfect combination, no pun intended, in that they became, no pun intended again, boys to men.
Got it. A lot of puns in there. Yeah, like going to that concert, that's one of those. There's a handful of moments that I remember distinctly and succinctly growing up where I look back at it now and I'm like, I'm glad I was in that place at that time. Um, in addition to like the Heartbreak tour, when Uptown Records had the baseball game at City College, where it turned out to be a riot, I was there. Where where Puffy was sponsoring the game with I'll Be Sure and all the other guys, and it turned into a riot and a couple people got stumped on over at City College, which is like about like a 10-minute walk away from where I live now. I remember that distinctly. But to go back to Uptown to the Heartbreak tour, it was one of those moments where, as I've always been into music and I was always a singer, and to see men of color permeate the pop music landscape and be able to put on really strong performances where like there was not a moment lost in their shows. I mean, like it was like hit, 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 hit with full band choreography, 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 sweat flying all over the place, and they were still giving more. And granted, a lot of people were interested in seeing what the tension would be like between New Edition and Bobby Brown. We knew that there was something going on backstage or off stage or whatnot, but they didn't let it play off on stage at all. But I kid you not, when they would always close the set with Boys to Men at the end of their show, and every time people just you just hear everybody just singing every word, and they definitely would go down as being probably one of the best crafted, well put together showman groups of all time. Like I'll put, and some people fought me on this. I would put New Edition right there with the Temptations because, like, as far as what they creatively delivered at that period in time, and everybody knowing each individual member and having and each individual member getting their own respect as well as collectively. The only group that you could say that about was the Temptations. Like everybody knew every one of the Temptations names, and somewhere there was a fan club group devoted to each one. Kind of like what was going on with New Edition. Everybody had a fan in there because everybody found their way to appreciate one of those individual members. And then when Bobby left, I was like, whoa, because I looked at him as like he was like the Justin Timberlake of the New Edition, pretty much. Where he was like he was like, you know, he was more like the Robbie Williams of Take That. I'll put it that way, where he was he was the one who or you could say he was like the left eye in TLC. He was that one integral member where you could tell it was different when he was gone, but he kind of got lost in the shuffle when he was there, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was it was a really well developed tour. I mean, like it was one of those shows where it was months into anticipation of waiting until the day. Like people have the concert. This was when you would sleep outside of the venue to get the concert ticket, and then you would get the concert ticket and you would laminate it or put it in something and put it on the wall so you could always see it. And then when the concert date came, you got your outfit together that you probably would have never worn to school. You can go to the concert looking fly and just sweat your ass off the entire time. And it was one of those. And I distinctly remember the whole layout of the song layout and the energy that was in the venue. It was just a really, really classic moment.
Yeah, and the thing with New Edition, how as a group and as solo acts, they influenced the music industry. Because if you take a look at BBD and what BBD did, they had production from the Bomb Squad, Public Enemy's production, Hank Shockley, Keith Shockley, Eric Sadler, and how they were able to have that hip hop sound over R&B beats, and then the aesthetic with the airbrush overalls, everything airbrushed. I think that was done by the Shirt Kings, and how they really took. We're gonna take the hip hop look, we're gonna mesh it with our R&B appeal, and we're gonna create mentally hip hop smoothed out on R&B tip with a pop feel appeal to it, and it became a smash. And then of course, if you look at TLC's aesthetic from Ooh on the TLC tip, directly female counterpart to BBD. Same look, bright colors, big, baggy. And then of course, Mike discovering Boyz II Men and how that came from the New Edition tree. And you're seeing their imprint everywhere, all over the industry. Look at the numbers that the New Edition story did when it came on BET back in 2017, and them just wrapping up their recent residency out in Vegas. It was well received, so much so that they're doing another run of shows in July.
I can believe it because between that and the shows that I heard the most about because I went to Vegas to see Kylie Minogue and there's a networking of it's a website that people go on when they're getting ready to go to different shows in Vegas, and they can chat amongst themselves about which shows are really good and what shows they really like or whatnot. And there was a lot of buzz about New Edition and Usher show. Like everybody was speaking about Usher show, and the New Edition show, it surprised a lot of people because they anticipated doing well and having its own audience, but they didn't expect it to do as well as it did. I mean, those tickets sold out like really fast every time they went on sale. And so that was a strong testament of that New Edition. They might not have put any new music out for a while, but the songs that they did put out withstood time, and they developed more and more fans over time. Like even when you mentioned TLC and BBD, I was totally thinking that because when I remember seeing Ain't Too Proud to Beg, and they both, that and Poison, both had the same suggestive nature to them, and they had the same the same aggressive rap part that was pretty raunchy, but then they would sing this real smoothed out part over it, and at the same time in airbrush gear, looking like you couldn't tell if they were like 5 years old or 15 or 25. But like just the fact that they were able to reference something that they identified with, and even with there was a group recently that I saw that kind of threw me back into that same mindset. I'm trying to remember who it was, but they kind of had that same aesthetic. And those sorts of things are formulas that work. I mean, it's like when you have something that's eye catching, and sometimes they say sex sells, but it does. But if it's I remember I was reading something that Lady Gaga said, and I kind of laughed when I read it. She said, when you have something that's creative and you develop it organically, you have art. When you find yourself forcing yourself to try and make art, you usually make crap.
Mm.
So I remember thinking that's what's applicable to like a lot of artists when like New Edition. You can't think of whenever you get the picture of the If It Isn't Love video, you know exactly what's referenced. You know it's them in the straight row with the mic stands and the stirrup pants and doing the whole court. Most of us even remember the whole routine. I mean, those are images that burn themselves into your brain. And I think those are moments where classics are made, and those are the things that withstand time. And like again, I keep drawing back to it. Like what's now going to be that version of that? Like
Yeah,
that same is that same creativity, that same instinctive appeal to wanting to make something that's cohesive and withstanding. Is that even in the artists that are out now?
right. And with Vegas, like we mentioned, New Edition's residency, Usher's residency, Wu-Tang got a residency, Jodeci got a little residency. I think Vegas is starting to see the buying power of the black dollar out in Sin City was, hey, we want to see some shows too. We want to see more than just Wayne Newton, magic shows, and Blue Man Group. So I think Vegas is going to invest heavy in getting more legacy urban acts out there because they're saying, hey, this is a underserved audience out here that we never really catered to like that. So let's go ahead, let's pump the money in.
There was that Lovers and Friends festival that really told them that that's something that they could viably see as a bankable opportunity. When they started doing that out in Vegas, and started seeing that the black dollar had some power to it, and when they started, and Usher was one of the people who was involved in that at the beginning. And once they started, once those tickets went on sale, and they just saw all these people just come in droves. Like when I was there, like I saw Kylie at the Venetian, and they had just hollowed out this whole venue and made like this really nice um, nightclub area. I think it caps out at like 1,500 people, but the tickets are expensive, and you have to do like the whole table service thing. Like it's like $500 a person to even sit there. I mean, and but it was packed. I mean, like every seat in there sold out, and Jason Derulo is going to do the same venue once Christina Aguilera and Jason Derulo are going to take up space in it when Kylie takes a vacation. But even Tony Braxton's coming back to Vegas, and a couple other people. And so I was just sitting there, just like this. It's really a strong opportunity to develop those packages. Because I was watching, I was just in my hotel room, just prospecting and looking at all the different shows, and most of them offered whole packages where like you get the tickets, like you go online when the tickets go on sale, you can get the whole experience. That's tickets, the plane flight there and back, food voucher to the casino that's the host of the hotel, some goodies in a goodie bag and all this other type of stuff. And it comes out a lot less, even though it's still expensive, still comes out a lot less than it would be if you individually bought those things. And so like most of those venues, they're offering that, and that's what people are jumping on because it's the opportunity to get an all-inclusive weekend on things that you would have just blown your money on otherwise is a smart idea. And every venue is doing something similar. So I think that was really smart, and they're really casting a strong variance of acts where there's going to be somebody that you're going to like that's performing in Vegas this weekend. I mean, it's like there's a given. So once they've got you into Vegas and you already spent all your money on this one package, there's somebody that's going to be playing down the street that you're going to be like, okay, I'm interested. And most of the venues started creating a different space for attendees. Like they'll have all the seats and stuff, but just about every major theater has now opened additional space where you can just stand up in the back. And those are the tickets that they sell the day of. So even if you're like, if you just happen to be in Vegas and you don't think you can get a New Edition ticket because they're sold out, well, guess what? The seats, it's not even seats. The area way in the back that's kind of up in the air where you're standing and you can just stand and scream and wave the signs. Those tickets go on sale that day. So, and they're a lot less. They're like $80 or $60, something like that. So there's always an opportunity to get in to see those acts. So I think Vegas is really being smart with the people that they're giving venues to, and when they're giving them those venues, because none of them are has-beens. Like all of them are people who still have credible audiences that want to see them. So I think it's really smart of them to play it that way.
Right, yeah, because about a year or two ago, my wife, she went out to Vegas for her birthday. She brought the package to go see Bruno.
Mhm.
And it was where, like you mentioned, you get your show ticket, get your room, and you get some other goodies along with your package. And how it's definitely bang for your buck. But depending on the act, you're gonna get a show. And Bruno puts on a great show because Bruno comes from that school of artists who are legacy acts like Michael, Prince, Madonna, James Brown, and how he's gonna do it where it's sweat, where you're gonna be singing, dancing for 2+ hours. He's not gonna cheat the fans. And I think that's a lost art now where when you get the new artists coming in and you don't have the artist development, you got to come in already ready, and you're all about the now to where you're not realizing my fan is spending X amount of dollars on the ticket or X amount of dollars on some merch. I'm gonna make sure to give them their money's worth because they're sacrificing to come put money in my pocket.
Exactly. Now, Bruno, like you mentioned his name, like he's somebody that I think was going to withstand the test of time. Because he's so classic and he's all reaching that there's no there every Bruno song bombs. I mean, it's not bombs in a bad way. I mean, bombs is a hit. And he's one of those people that I really I could see him sticking around for a while. But when it comes to the artist development, like you mentioned, I think it's a lost art. I think the last person that we really saw a record label really drop some time and some concern in trying to develop probably Lady Gaga when I think about it. I mean, like, was there anybody after that really? I mean, like when they really spend all this energy and money and time and invest in their visuals and give them some time to develop their project and then drop them at the right time. And I mean, a lot of that calculation, I mean, like that's a lost art. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing so many disposable people because they're just getting what they can out of them as soon as they get out of them, which is like a first song or two. And then
Mhm.
we're getting people who they're none of them are sustainable live acts because they say that in order to be considered a professional at something, you have to spend at least 1,000 hours of practical experience doing it. And in order to that, no, 10,000 hours, I'm sorry, 10,000 hours to be able to be considered an expert. And a lot of the singers now have there's no choirs in school anymore, so there's no more music education. A lot of the singers that we respect, they were background singers for other people, or they were a singer themselves when they were like in their early teens, like Patti LaBelle and Gladys and all of them. They were singing like they were like 12, and they were singing the entire time. So they got their 10,000 hours in before they even got a record deal. Or even with Michael Jackson, like he got a lot of his experience like really from Joe Jackson drilling it into them. So I'm pretty sure he got his 10,000 hours before he got a record deal too. But you look at that as opposed to now those opportunities to really develop your craft aren't there. So now we've got people whose voices don't sustain on stage long enough, or now they got to go get nodule surgery. Then we've got people who are stage fright. They're just overridden with stage fright because they aren't used to being on stages. So now they give us poor performances. Then you've got people who might have because they say you spend your entire life to do your first record, so they've got a really strong first record, but then the second one is crap. So I mean, and so so we don't get this opportunity to see these creative people who really have a strong performance ability stick around. And I think that's one of the lost things about the whole artisan repertoire development and just putting some energy and time and making sure that we could get the best out of the artists that we can so that they can want to give us the best they can because they'll be passionate about what they do. But now it's just a crank them out type situation. And like I keep saying, it really makes me concerned about who's going to be around. Because I'll be damned if I'm in my 60s and the only thing that comes on a throwback station is Laffy Taffy. I'll be damn like I'll be really upset if I turn on the R&B station. That's what I keep hearing. But just wanting to see people just give their best and have it be appreciated is all I'm all for.
Right, and you mentioned Laffy Taffy, and I want to kind of sort of tie it around on this, talking about the Atlanta movement and how, with Usher headlining the Super Bowl halftime show this year, and how next week, the Freaknik documentary will be dropping on Hulu, and how, Atlanta, when you think about it, how prior to Jermaine Dupri, So Def, it was only Brick, SOS Band. Side note, Organized Noir producer, singer Sleepy Brown's father was in the band Brick, for those that don't know, and how, with So Def and Jermaine Dupri and what he did with Crisscross, Escape. Then you had another bad creation out of Atlanta, managed by Kevin Wells, and then everything to come after that with Ludacris, with T.I., D4L, Young Jeezy, and how Outcast.
Right.
I can't forget about Outcast and Organized Noise, Future, and how that whole scene in Atlanta, Raheem the Dream, DJ Toomp, DJ Taz, and how Atlanta really set the forefront, Little John set the forefront for what was to come, and how I think Usher's headline in the Super Bowl was a plant the flag moment, almost like when Andre 3000 came on the stage at the Source Hip Hop Awards and said the South got something to say. And I think Usher headlining the Super Bowl this past year was a full circle moment for Atlanta.
I agree because like back in the day, like I remember when Atlanta was at its epicenter when they were calling it Hot Atlanta. Like that was that period when the Freaknik was an event. I'm not too sure if it still is, but um, that was a very critical moment for Atlanta, and it was a booming moment for a lot of people of color because there was so many opportunities that were just launching and creating themselves in Atlanta. Like so many businesses went down there and just opened up, and the young people of color in particular, were creating opportunities in Atlanta that because of the landscape of the colleges being in close proximity and there being a historical significance or relevance to the city of Atlanta itself, it gave itself well to be able to offer itself as a vessel or a venue for people to use it as their launching pad. So I wasn't surprised that a lot of the different creative endeavors that came out of there from like Dallas Austin and Jermaine Dupri and all those guys, that they all started in Atlanta. I think Usher headlining it really brought a lot of attention back to Atlanta. Not that the attention was ever really lost, but it just wasn't as relevant as it was, mainly because there's so many different other enterprises popping up nationally that take that light away that you don't really hear about anymore. Like you don't even hear about New York anymore. I mean, like there's always something going on here, but as far as the landscape goes, there seems to be a flavor of the month and a flavor of a different city every month. So to take it back to Atlanta, and I'm interested in seeing the documentary on Freaknik because I'm really curious if it's going to be honest to what the Freaknik was. It was a celebration. It was some raunchiness going on, but it was a tribal right that a lot of people of color did when we graduated from high school. We would go to down to Atlanta for Freaknik. I mean, it was like one of those things where it was just part of that urban experience, just like going to the South on Myrtle Beach was for like a lot of white kids. I mean, it was just one of those things where it's part of that experience and you felt welcome in that environment because it was pretty much welcoming to you. So I'm anxious to see the documentary, and I think it's about time that we took some respect back to Atlanta because they deserve it.
And forget the Falcons. I love Georgia. They gave us WCW. They gave us the greatness known as Waffle House. But be sure to go to Waffle House after midnight. Got to make sure your sanitation grade is below 80, and you got to know how to throw hands if you're gonna go eat at a Waffle House. I know from experience, being a Southern boy, born and raised on scattered, smothered, covered hash browns. And before we conclude the interview, any shout outs you want to give and any you want to say before we close?
Well, I just want to like give a shout because I have the most supportive friend base in the world. So I just have to like give a shout out to all my friends. And that's Jeremy and Maria and Anna and Betty and Jeff and all my other friends here. Because without them, everybody does something creative and we get an opportunity to really support each other. So I think that's really important for people to have as a supporting base. And I just like to give a big shout out to everybody who's trying to do something and to create something create something presentable and that they want to stand behind that's an expression of their artistic inclination and it's from their heart. I think all those people deserve to get the encouragement in the world, and I wish them the best. And there's going to be somebody listening for it and looking out for it. So just go about doing the best version of you, and nobody else can replicate that.
All right. And you can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasting on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Album Cover. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you, round of applause for Mr. Christian Jones for coming on Beyond the Album Cover. Thank you once again for coming on, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a joy, and I appreciate it, and I enjoy what you do.
Yes, sir.